One of my fondest memories about one of the people in the world I love the most is a story that took place after a recent performance of John Luther Adams' The Mathematics of Resonant Bodies. This is an 85-minute solo that John wrote for me 13 or 14 years ago, and I played it last summer at Lincoln Festival at the Mostly Mozart series. And this is an advanced percussion piece. It's a sophisticated language, and it's really kind of one of the sort of pinnacle events, in my opinion, of where all of this talk about the evolution of the percussive art has led us. It has led us, at least it's led me to play John's solo. And it's an important venue, and we played, and the concert was great, and we had a lot of fun. And then we walked outside, and we found ourselves in Manhattan, and on our way to the restaurant afterwards. And John and I got separated a little bit from the crowd of people and found ourselves waiting for the signal to cross a street, and the rest of our friends and family had gone ahead, and we were just sitting there without talking, and there were all of those sounds, and there were people, and there were machines, and there was even a little bit of nature as there was a little wind that night, and all of those things mixed together into a soundscape that was as vivid and as potent, as poetic as John's percussion solo was. And we sat there in silence, and we know each other well enough to sit in silence often and just listen to things. And he looked at me and he said, "Isn't it grand? Isn't it amazing? Isn't it fantastic that these sounds exist?" You know, I think about listening to outside sounds the way I think about eating. Just for a second, imagine that you're on your way to Chez Panisse or Daniel or one of the great restaurants, right? And that you've spent the last 3 hours stuffing your face with corn dogs, and you arrive at this fantastic restaurant, and then you feel like, well, nothing on the menu looks good. This is what we do to ourselves in sound. We come to a concert experience, you know, in some cases one that we've had to save our pennies for, and we've had to get dressed and find babysitting and a place to park, and we come for this precious concert experience, and yet the entirety of the day we filled our ears with whatever sounds might be available, the acoustic equivalent of fast food. But what if you were a composer like John Luther Adams, who's, you know, my great friend, and decided that instead of pursuing a kind of mainstream career in a major American city, that he would go to Alaska, as John said, the last great reservoir of silence. And for 30 years, that's what you consume. You consume silence, you consume the sound of glaciers calving, and you consume the sounds of wildlife. It would put you in a frame of mind that created a language where the outside and the inside really, really spoke to each other. So when I listen to John, even though now that he lives in New York and has left Alaska, at least for the time being, that experience there, his 30-year meditation on silence and the sounds of that landscape show up in every single piece. This was an experience that we heard when we played Inukswit several years ago. It was the experience you heard when we played the concert music a couple of years ago, and when we played Sila, the Breath of the World, with 80-some musicians spread out throughout the park at OjaiU near the Libby Bowl, and on the Faculty Glade at Berkeley. You'll find a kind of aquarelle of sound. In other words, a wash of this gorgeous sound that is laid like a sonic transparency on the sounds of that space. So by connecting place to sound and place to meaning, John has successfully invited us to listen to our world with new ears.